science knowledge only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower.
Evidence is evidence. It's public. Everybody can look at the evidence and assess it, and eventually, if there's enough evidence, come to the same conclusion.
Cockatoos with attitude. Cockatude. Hi, I'm Don Scott with the Chloe Sanctuary for Parrots and Cockatoos, and this is Cockatude. Cockatoos with attitude. This is Peaches, and what we're going to do on our first 12 podcasts is to talk about each of the birds, our permanent sanctuary birds that live here. And Peaches is a Moluccan cockatoo. She came to us a little over 3 years ago, and one of our volunteers went all the way to Los Angeles to get her. At that time, she had feather destructive behavior, but oddly, just across her chest area and a little bit on her shoulders. She would only eat out of these little green bowls, and that's what we were told. And the lady who was fostering her had trouble giving her medicine and was throwing a towel over her every day to get her so she could give her medicine twice a day. And she also had her tail section right back here. Her tail section was a mess. She had a swollen uropygeal gland, which is the gland where they produce oil. And her tail feathers were just, they were just sad. They were twisted in every direction, and there was swelling at the base of the feathers. And so that's how she came to us. And the first thing you always do is we got her to a vet and had a basic evaluation done. And it showed her to be a little underweight at close to 600 grams, and she was a little bit what looked like she was aggressive. She would tend to nip if she was held for more than just a couple of minutes. She wouldn't socialize with other birds. And she did not seem to be too interested in eating or being involved in anything, really. And so what we did was observing that she would only eat from these small bowls. I was told only these tiny, small green bowls. What we did is we tried the lids from jars, which were even closer down to the table. And she liked those even better. And after that, she didn't want to touch the other higher bowls. Because her tail section was so damaged, and because she had feather destructive behavior only right here, and the fact that we didn't see her raise her head much, we took her in for x-rays. And the x-rays showed, as you can see in the corner here, the x-rays showed that she had looked like a swayback in her neck. She actually had 6 fused vertebrae. And this is a really wild guess, but the only thing she's afraid of is brooms. So if you put fused vertebrae and fear of brooms together, it doesn't paint a good picture, but that's not necessarily the way it was. She has, oh, by the way, I have laryngitis, and we just couldn't wait any longer to start these podcasts. So here I am with laryngitis, holding the Peach, and telling you about her. Hello. Hello. You gonna say hello to everybody else? Say hello. Hello. See? Hello. She has a big vocabulary, but she rarely uses it. It's almost as if once they become sure of themselves and happy, they don't have to use their vocabulary much. So if you tie it to specific rewards, that might actually make it a little bit better. But anyway, she showed that she could barely turn her neck. I mean, compared to other birds, they have 27 vertebrae in their neck, and they can turn their neck almost all the way around, like in The Exorcist, you know. We don't see the green pea stuff happen very often. Because they have such a flexible neck and a fused spine, the spine is fused so that they have the musculature can attach there that will allow them to flap their wings well enough that they can actually fly. but they have this great flexibility, and most birds can preen their tail section without a problem. But in her case, she could not preen that. So I had to preen her tail section. I still do, and you wouldn't believe how many feathers there are back there. I mean, you have to scrape off the sheath if they don't open up all the way, and they don't look like a normal feather. They have to be worked until they come out, so a new feather can come in. There's a couple of reasons for that. It's not just looks. If the feather stays there, doesn't open up and become a feather that looks normal, it can become impacted. And once that feather gets impacted in the base, then you have a medical issue. The first thing that happened was she had a feather that was hanging off her tail section, and it was bleeding. So I took my hemostats, and you pull gently, you clamp them on, and you pull gently till the feather comes out. You don't yank, because that can damage the follicle. When I did that, it left a piece of the feather inside the follicle itself, and it was still bleeding, which is not the way it should be. So I took some sewing thread, and just because the follicle had a sheath that came out farther than it should have, I just tied that together to stop the bleeding and got her to Dr. Loudis in Encinitas at All Pets Animal Hospital. He's a good surgeon with birds, and he cleaned it up and cauterized it, but I had to go back 2 days later. We scheduled another appointment where he could go in and clean out the whole follicle area because it didn't look good. So it was infected. He cleaned it all out, and it's much better. She does still have some sensitivity down in that area, and nothing has come up, and she hasn't had another issue since then, but we watch it pretty close. So then she developed another issue, which she became disinterested in food. She likes to look in the window out at the property, and we live on an acre, and she likes to look outside and watch the birds and be involved in life. And so she started just sitting on the cage. There's a little cage she climbs up on where she can bounce up and down on it, and because she can't display normally as most birds do because of her neck. So it's much better for her if she can hang on the side of a cage and bounce up and down. But she was just sitting on top of this cage, eyes half shut, just looking terrible. And so we took her in and put her on 21 days of Baytril. And that seems to have knocked whatever that was out. She showed an interest. There's her feathers. See, I have to actually either clean them up and open them up, or if they're just getting a little old, you just pull gently and they come out. So when she has an older feather that she would normally pull out herself, I have to do that. So I'm kind of preening her as we're talking, trying to do 2 things or 3 things at once, which when you have a bird sanctuary is necessary. What we did with her feather behavior, her feather destructive behavior, where she picked her chest and her feathers here, is we gave her haloperidol, and we started her out at 0.09 milliliters. We started her out at 0.09 milliliters, and from there we adjusted down until we reached 0.07, and then it rolled around between 0.04 and 0.07. Based on her behavior, we would increase it or decrease it. You see her starting to do a little picking. Then we would, every 2 days adjust that. That went away, and eventually we were able to take her completely off haloperidol. That's if a bird has been doing this for more than a year, You can pretty much count they're going to be on it for the rest of their lives. That's not really a big problem because they actually seem to enjoy life more. It's kind of like that cup of coffee in the morning. Take away the stress, gives them a little bit of energy. I think it's because it decreases the anxiety that their energy level goes up. You will hear people say, "Oh, my bird became a zombie." Well, you probably had them on too much. It's not a big deal. It's not going to hurt them. Just lower the dosage. And then you got to play with it. You might get it so low they start picking again, and you have to slowly bring it back up. Eventually you find a base level, plus their body becomes adjusted to it. Most people are used to just taking a pill. It doesn't work quite that way with this. It's give them a little bit of this in a syringe, just orally, or mix it with peanut butter. Probably better to use almond butter, but just something so that the birds who won't take it by syringe, you can give it to them in food. And then just make sure they're actually getting a dose, a specific dose, so that you know how to adjust it. And it took about a year, but she's no longer taking it. Are you, baby? Are you? Are you no longer taking it? What do you say? Do you have anything to say? You going to say to the audience? Want to say something? No? Say hello.
Hello.
Oh, hello, Sal. What are you doing? What are you doing, Sal? Oh, you gonna cluck on me? Okay. So, her socialization with other birds, when she came to us, she wasn't, hello. She wasn't too interested in socializing. Were you, baby? How do you feel about other birds? Hey, you two. Come here. Well, come here. One of you. Come here, Cause. Come on. Okay. Watch her reaction to Cause. See it? Yeah. See the way she backs away from him just a little bit? Him. Actually, Causey is a her. And that look. That look in her eyes. Like she startles easy with other birds. That's better than it was. She really wouldn't tolerate a bird that close to her before. Now she'll tolerate it, but she prefers not to have it. Don't you, baby? Now she's got the feathers in front of her beak, which kind of indicates I'm not a threat. And she's pulled her feathers back down tight to her body, so she's okay. She's still kind of looking up there. Like, okay, why did he bring her out? But she's had many issues over time. Biting was one. It appears that she was biting because she had pain in her neck. She was on Medicam for quite some time, taking a small dose every day. Then we made it every other day. And now she doesn't take it anymore. Medicam is an anti-inflammatory. But it seems as if that issue is just over with. She doesn't nip unless she's been bouncing around on you and she hurts her neck. That's a good guess because it's just that situation. She bounces around, she gets those feathers out, she starts behaving. And I tried to, oh, by the way, I tried to video this once before today, and I've had this flu and laryngitis, and I just forgot to click one of the cameras on, so I had to start over, so my voice is really going. But what we've been dealing with social behavior, her behavior with other birds, her behavior with people has been good, except for when she starts bouncing her head around and gets too active, which she was doing earlier when I was videoing. She got all fluffed up and was displaying. That would have been nice to have in the podcast, but I didn't have a camera on. Duh. All birds develop issues over time. I've seen many times, especially on Facebook, where people will say, "Oh, I'd love to get another bird, but I have to be sure it's going to work out with my other bird." We've never considered that at all here. If a bird needs help, we bring it in, and we fit it in. And there are issues, and there always will be issues. Peaches has some interesting sounds she makes. She makes the sound of a smoke detector and a screaming baby. along with a squawk that's pretty loud. One of her recent issues is that she started right along with the advent of mating season, which fortunately doesn't last all year. It's just from late October until March. When those hormones start raging, you see changes in behavior. And her change in behavior is to start screaming. What we define screaming as making the same repetitive squawk at about 100 to 125 decibels every second or every 2 seconds. In her case, it was more like every 3 seconds, but we're talking she'd go on an hour with just ah, ah, ah. And while it doesn't bother me, it could be an issue, when and if she ends up somewhere else because they live 80 years. If she manages to live that amount of time, she's going to be in a lot of homes. And not everybody's going to be as understanding and realize that you can change that behavior. She's already reduced that behavior by a good 50%. The methods we have used to reduce it are to reward her at those times when she's quiet or she's making her other sounds. Then her favorite reward is to be petted. That's her favorite reward, isn't it, baby? Yeah. Give her toys to play with. We use the applied behavior analysis techniques and methods. And the one we've been using there is the differential reinforcement of zero rates. And that's just a fancy way of saying within a certain time frame, they don't do a certain behavior or they behave in a certain way and they get a reward. And so with her, it's about every 5 minutes. And we started out originally about every 30 seconds, and now it's up to about every 5 minutes. If she's playing quietly, making her fun, positive sounds, and she's not repetitively screaming, that's really a redundancy if she's not screaming, then she gets a reward, which in her case is to be told, "I love you, Peaches," and petted. Right, Peach? Yeah, I know. I know you love me, baby. I know. She's had other issues. In the beginning, she wouldn't take the medicine with a syringe from anybody but me. And now she doesn't have to take it, but she got to the point where that was just easy. Walk over, she'd open her beak, give her the medicine, and we were done. It was that simple. Didn't start out that way. Originally, the person who had her was chasing her around and throwing a towel over her to get her, and then forcing her to take the medicine. Well, that stopped when she got here. But she would argue with me about it, and sometimes she'd try to spit it out and that kind of thing. But over time, she got rewarded, and again, she's not much. Most birds will take a sunflower seed or a bit of an almond or whatever little things they like, a piece of papaya. She likes to be petted. Now you're getting a little overexcited. She's starting to vibrate. I have to be careful. It's that time of year. And you'll note I do pet her down the back. And in this particular case, it doesn't matter. And the reason it doesn't matter that I pet her down the back is pretty simple. She's already mated to me. So if she starts to get overstimulated, I'll stop. But once you've got that mated behavior, which can be bad if you have somebody comes in and says, "Hey," try to put their arms around you. The next thing you know, you've got this big bite mark in your arm or in your lip or on your face. That's normal for the bird. The bird is basically saying that this is a dangerous situation. You have somebody else coming in who's trying to take my spot in the relationship. So if you don't let your bird get mated to you, if you pet him only on the head and don't pet him down the back, or especially not under the wings, then at that point they don't have that mated behavior. You don't want that mated behavior. We have one bird here, Sugar. She's a Moluccan, and she came to us with mutilation issues, and she was all torn up, didn't have most of her feathers, and I had to work with her putting collars on her neck and putting different doses. We tried Haldol, we tried Paxil, finally gave up on the Paxil. She would dive into the carpet with the collars on and just cry out in agony, and it just was such a stress. after trying all these different collars and getting her feathers back on, but not being able to handle the issue of her chewing herself, we just doubled the dose. We went up to where we consider high mutilator, where birds actually near death because they're cutting into themselves, and she just had a high resistance to it. Once we got her up in that range, she didn't have an interest. What she did do, though, the day I took her collar off, was, we'll go into this on her video, but she preened herself. She just, and literally nothing but preening, she just cleaned up her body, which must have been itching pretty badly. So, the prognosis for Peaches is that she needs really special care. You have to make sure she's preened on the tail area, which I'll maintain. I'm 60 years old. We're guessing Peaches are somewhere around 20 years of age. So she's going to live to be 80, and I know I'm not going to live, to the end of her life unless something happens to her before I go. So people need to know that you need to preen her tail section carefully. Try to break off there's a sheath around every feather. And I don't know if I can show you one. I'll try. I don't know if it'll show up in the video. But you have to take the feather and the little sheath. There's a little, you can see where the blood is, and there's a section of white after that. And you have to peel gently that sheath off around the feather and fluff the feather. So you have to do that to her whole tail section and to her back up here, because she can't reach up in here. So this whole section down her back has to be done by somebody, which is why she's mated to me. And just come up and give me a punch on the shoulder while she's on my lap and see how nicely she'll treat you. That's why you don't want to do that with your bird unless you have to, like we did with Peaches. Right, Peaches? Peaches? Peaches! Peaches! So her prognosis is good. We have to watch to make sure she doesn't start up her feather destructive behavior, because resurgence of behavior is where a behavior comes back after time. You have to watch for it. So far, anytime she seems to be picking a little bit at her chest, just lightly spraying her down with a fine mist of water to her feathers. Most birds will not pick when they're wet. It's not a cure, though, because as soon as they dry out in 20 minutes or a half an hour, they're back at it. With her, she seems to just stop. Don't you, baby? So we're working with her to become a little more social with the other birds, and keeping an eye on her physical and mental level, whether her eyes are clear, and making sure she doesn't develop any behaviors that would make it so that when I'm gone, she would have trouble finding a home. And just the sound she makes as the smoke detector and the sound of the crying baby could be enough to drive most human beings over the edge. We're the Chloe Sanctuary for Parrots and Cockatoos. Visit us at www.chloesanctuary.org. Chloe is spelled C-H-L-O-E. Chloe was our first bird. And you can donate at Patreon at the address you see on the video. And on a per video basis, $1 a video, whatever you want to do, something to help us out to take care of these birds. It's a lot of money involved. About $25,000 comes out of my pocket every year to do this. And I think it's work well worth doing. And we're trying to train people and in dealing with these guys, these wild animals, and that takes money. So you can donate there, make a one-time donation at our website at the donor page, the donor tab on the top will take you to Razoo, where you can make a donation, a single donation. And we look forward to talking to you about Babaloo on our next video. Babaloo is a greater sulfur-crusted cockatoo who was rehomed 8 times in the first 11 years of his life. And his issues, most people would say, were aggression. But it was more like a feeling that you could never belong. So good luck with all your birds, and feel free to contact us. And you can find our contact information on our webpage. And we would love to have you ask questions, and we'll be glad to answer questions at the end of our podcast. We've done a lot of studies, but I've got to tell you, no amount of experience is going to help you without a basic scientific understanding of these animals. If you don't understand their nature, you're going to misread things. We call that cognitive bias. That's when you think the sun rises because you don't know the science that shows that the earth is turning and not the sun. So we tend to do that in things. Good example is when people say that, oh, the birds are dominant. You don't want a bird on your shoulder because birds have they're dominant. So if they sit on your shoulder, they're going to be in control of you. That's not true, because parrots have no dominance. Cockatoos have no dominance. That's a scientific fact. That's a scientific fact that has been proven. If you look into it, you'll find out that these birds have no dominance. So you have to learn to look, be aware of what we know about them, and to observe behavior in the raw. You have to look at it and say, what is that behavior? Not what are they thinking? What's their mental state? We'll never know that. But we know that certain behaviors occur in certain situations and can be dealt with using certain tools. And that's how we deal with them, right, Peaches? You want to say goodbye, Peaches? Say goodbye to the video. Peaches, say goodbye to the video. Say bye, video. Peaches. Peaches. Show them how pretty you are. Come on, Peach. Come on, Peach. Isn't that a pretty bird? Isn't that a pretty bird? Hello, baby. Good girl. That's it for our podcast. See you next time. Please visit our website at www.chloesanctuary.org. That's Chloe spelled C-H-L-O-E. You can support us on a per episode basis by visiting www.patreon.com, that's Patreon /Chloe Sanctuary.